Great.
So, Father, thanks for my brothers and sisters there, and pray that our time would be encouraging and challenging and fruitful for them and their churches. So lead the conversation, our thoughts, our questions, so we can continue to grow, to learn to love people well. As Mark said, to become friends of sinners, to make disciples, and just to bring your influence and your glory to the places you've called us to live. So pray that this would be helpful towards that end. So we love you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 So before we get going into any new things, I'd love to hear any thoughts, reflections, questions about the old things. Things we talked about previously. Any reflections on any of that? Last time specifically, we talked about the whole idea of planning, specific planning. I was proposing doing it 30 days at a time, because that seems to be what most people can handle without getting overwhelmed. And so we talked about that specifically. We also talked about just clarifying who is the mission we are sent to. Got lots of people around us all the time in our neighborhoods, workplaces. And so bringing some focus to that so that we're not scattered all over the place relationally, but there's some focus so that we are actually becoming friends of sinners, not just acquaintances of many people. So anyway, thoughts, reflections about anything we've talked about.
What stayed with you, folks? What's provoked you?
Well, I think it's just the naturalness of the whole thing, which is what I've mentioned before, I think.
Tell us more, Margie.
Well, well, God gives you the people around you, doesn't he, to begin with? So I think that it's just kind of reaching out from there. You know, not in a sort of a, yeah, just a sort of, it's just a natural life, isn't it, with people who don't know the Lord. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how I was doing some training with some churches this past weekend, and as always, I hear the excuse of, man, we're so busy. We're so busy. But tied into that comment is this unfortunate reality that a lot of Christians, everybody's got the same amount of time, right? So unless like you're fighting for survival, you make choices about your discretionary time. How you're gonna fill your evenings, how you're gonna fill your weekends, who you're gonna fill it with. But to your comment, just how easy it is for many Christians to look past, and I don't know why this is, but to look past people that God's put right in their just normal rhythm of life. Because when you hear that excuse or that comment, oh man, we like what you're saying, but we're so busy, we can't imagine doing that, living like that. And it definitely takes a bit of sacrifice and a bit of prioritizing and a bit of those things. But a lot of it is just being intentional with the people that are right there. I think that's what's cool about God's design and all of this. He's put us He's put people all around us in our everyday lives, work, school, play, shopping, neighborhood. They're there.
Mm.
They're there. We don't have to go far to look for them. We don't have to, it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
So we don't have to have a big program to find them or a big program to reach them. They're right there.
Yeah. Case in point, Todd, Jo is not here because she's just gone out with some of the ladies just for a social in a local kind of evening vibey cafe, and one of her own Christian ladies has said, "I've just got in from work, so I'm going to relax. I'm not coming." So Jo replied to her, "Well, what do you think we're going to be doing? We're going to be relaxing." You know, it's a mindset shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're so on the defensive all the time. Fall back, don't attempt anything, stick the telly on. We're just anesthetized against, you know, living.
Yeah. Yep. Well, more than ever, I think because of COVID too, we were already very individualistic in how we approach life. So I think that's gotten even worse. Also, honestly, just very, I don't know how to say it nicely, lazy and just kind of selfish and self-centered. Like you said, getting home, just gonna stay at home, not care about anybody else, spend time with anybody else. So I think all of that's connected.
Yeah.
Where a lot of Christians are thinking about most of life as what's safe, comfortable, what's in it for me, how do I feel? So it's sad that it feels like even too much work to go out and have fun with some other Christians. Isn't that crazy? Like that feels or sounds like work. Like, how did we get to that place? So, any other comments along those lines? Well, a good question is, okay, if that's the case that we're all dealing with in our, contexts, how do we make progress with that? How do we?
I mean, how do you make progress without actually condemning people? I mean, like seemingly that we're we're just saying you're not up to the mark. And I just find this it's just really difficult, because it's about Jesus, basically. It's about our own relationship with Jesus, and that we're passionate about Jesus and that we're living with Jesus. So we're discipling those people into that. But I don't know. I just find it really, it's just very challenging. And we are not doing the stuff we need to be doing. I mean, our community is not doing what it needs to be doing. It's really, I just finding it really hard. Yeah.
What are some things you've tried, any of you? Again, try to answer that. So we're talking, I like what you said. Tied into that, I would say it's obviously a motivation. Mm-hmm. Obviously a motivation thing. Motivation comes from the heart. Mostly, there's a mental thing going on too, but it's really like our heart, our loves, our priorities that grow out of a place of the heart. So what are some things you guys have tried, or?
We've tried the power of FOMO, fear of missing out. Someone said the world is run by the people that show up. So we just keep going with those who will gather. And sometimes, maybe there is only 12 people rather than the 30 that we would like, but we press ahead. The other day we were singing happy birthday to 2 people on video, recorded it on the phone because they weren't even there. They didn't even show up for their own birthday party, but we went ahead with the celebration anyway. And so, you know, I kind of sometimes feel that, you know, just keeping going, and maybe that will create some a little bit of healthy regret that people sometimes may wish they had come. Not wishing to guilt trip people, but just keep having a good time, keep meeting, keep eating, keep praying, keep, you know, working together. And we're hoping that it will create some kind of missional pull that will draw people to come and join us. And certainly, you know, we're working with the people that are showing up, and some of them are loving it. But we can't make people live this way.
No, I agree, Mark, and I think that it is quite a fine line to tread between encouraging people and hoping that and expecting that people are going to be turning up and making a commitment to it and all the rest of it. But we've got to be very careful that we don't come across as almost not condemning them, but criticizing them, because the whole thing is a family thing and a natural thing, as I was sort of mentioning earlier. It's the main thing that I picked up from it, and so therefore it will be that there will be sometimes people who feel really tired and stuff, and that's just natural and life. And I think if people feel that we're putting them under any pressure, they're not going to be wanting to.
No.
You know, I think we just have to be very sensitive, surely, with all
Yeah,
that stuff, because otherwise it becomes more and more formal.
Yeah.
But I think being family should be, I mean, what we say, you know, if we're absolutely knackered, I'm probably knackered at the end of the day, but we all need to eat.
Yeah.
We all need to eat. So you get your dinner put for you, and hey, we get to hang out and we just get to hear how you're doing. And we're family. So if we don't see you one week, that's just like, oh no, it's another week. And, you know, so actually, I think being family is one of the strengths of saying, well, actually, we're family. So we come when we're tired, we come when we're rejoicing, we come when we're crying, we come when we're joyful. That's what family is. So we're not trying to just put on that we're going to come when we're feeling great and on a show, but actually we're here because we're family. And I think it's really important that people outside see that as well. That we're family and we're cultivating family.
And that's authentic, isn't it, Jude? It's like, you know, we're feeling tired, you're feeling tired. Let's get together and be tired together.
Yeah, exactly. I spent most of my life tired. Well, not all the time, but it seems. Yeah.
Great comments. Great comments, everybody.
I still feel that's the best place if you are not feeling well, if you're feeling absolutely exhausted, the best place to relax is in your own home.
Well, we'll come to yours then, Margie.
Do. Absolutely. Come to my place. You'll find it all hard to fit in.
If you're ill, I mean, that's different. I mean, you know, I'm just talking about
nobody's disagreeing with that, Margaret. So there's obviously times.
Yeah.
There's obviously times for that. So, but I like what everybody's saying. A couple comments. One, something Mark said. I was telling some leaders the other day, like, don't ever cancel anything you have planned.
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't think family cancels. So I was giving them some examples of many times we've organized a meal, a party, something. We thought 5 or 6 families were going to come, and one came. Would have been easy when they started dropping to say, oh man, 3 dropped. Oh no, 4 dropped. Let's cancel, reschedule. I think you. I
just find it difficult. It's emotionally difficult as a leader. That though, it's really difficult because you might be tired yourself. Yeah. You're like pushing yourself. You're on the edge, not on the edge, but you're laying yourselves out, and you're like, well, actually, if I'm really honest, I'd really like to have a night off. So.
Oh, I get it. So it can be discouraging. It can be a bummer in that way. But my point is, some of our best conversations, some of our best relational moments with people, which actually wouldn't have happened if there would have been more people there, happened because there was just one or two or a few. We didn't know that. Like, we had some expectation, we had a plan of what it was going to look like. It was very different from that, but we had some very deep, life-giving conversation with those few people. Again, wouldn't have happened if we would have canceled. It wouldn't have happened if a lot of people had been there, probably. We would have ended up talking about other things. So anyway, point is, don't cancel. A couple other comments about what everybody said. I think, you know, we've got 5 kids. For our family to run smoothly, we've got to have expectations. So Margaret, to your point, obviously, it's all filled with grace. It's all filled with patience. But Jesus also didn't have a problem of consistently setting a high bar.
Yeah.
He consistently did it with the disciples. He consistently did it with the crowds. Think of some of the crazy, you know, it's like, did he really just say that to that crowd? Kind of shocking, you know. So Jesus had no problem calling them to high expectations.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to learn to do that with patience and grace, but not shrink back from it. So, and then one other thought as you guys were talking, is just with the things that we're doing, the relational things, the meals, the parties, the different environments we create, if they are truly life-giving, like if the relationships are good and people are being encouraged, that's attractive. So that's kind of a humbling question to ask, is like, do people want to be here? If people don't want to be here, we better step back and say, why not? Because they should want to be here. Food should be good. The relationship and the conversation should be good. People should be loved well. If people are tasting that and experiencing that, like, even if I'm tired, it's like, man, I'm going because I know I'm going to go into that place with those people. I'm going to be loved well, served well, fed well, talked to well. They're going to care for me. And man, I need some care right now. It's been a hard week. It's been rough at work. Got a bunch of conflict in these other relationships. I need some care. I need some encouragement. I need something that's life-giving, because everything else in my life is sucking the life out of me. So it's a good, humble challenge, I think, to say everything we're doing relationally with people in homes, at the park, in the backyard, wherever it is it life-giving? How can we continue to grow in that so it's more and more life-giving? Because I believe if it is, people will opt out less.
Yeah.
Because you want to be around life-giving things and life-giving people, and you know.
The other thing is, Todd, in that is that when we try to behave or only go if we're feeling that we can give a good account of ourselves, we're missing all of that discipleship material of being real with each other. And you know, I think that's the vulnerability of it, is even especially as a leader, you know, they've seen me and not on a good day. So we're getting way past the facade now, and of course we get the opportunity to speak into each other's life. I mean, one of our guys, I had an argument with him in my own kitchen last Sunday, and we fell out. And he's not a Christian yet, but he was going at me and accusing me of, you know, this, that, and the other, and to do with my faith. And actually, the following week, we're in somebody else's house, and I actually went in the lounge with him, somebody else's lounge, closed the door, and I said, let's get this sorted. you know, I forgive you for what you said to me last week. Forgive me for if I said anything to offend you. And we had it out, and we did, you know, what was effectively biblical reconciliation. But we had to be real, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great thoughts, everybody. And again, that's you named it. Like, that is the work. All of this is the work of discipleship. You know, the lack of motivation, the lack of vision, the lack of love for others, you know, those are all things that we need to be talking about regularly with our people. Not just talking about, even asking the question, why are we struggling with consistency in meeting? Like, hey, everybody, we're putting a lot of time, we're putting a lot of energy into trying to live like family. Why the inconsistency? What's behind that? Let's get at the heart of it, the heart level motivation. And then even let's talk about some of the practicalities. Are we meeting at the wrong time? Is there a better time we could meet? Is there a better place we could meet? Is there a better way to organize this? Do you want more conversation, or a different kind of conversation, or more fun or less fun, or, you know, basically trying to get very specific about the root causes that are keeping people from consistent relational commitment. So, okay, awesome. Love all that. We're going to move on because I want to make sure we cover. Mark sent you a couple of things, kind of talking points. The first one, or one of them, was called having intentional gospel conversations. And I wanted to spend a little time with this. Really crucial. I have found that most Christians do not do this well. They do not do it well with each other, and therefore they do it even worse with non-Christians. So, first point in all of that, if we're going to, if we've got to grow in our ability to pursue people's stories and get into deep, vulnerable, genuine relationship with each other as Christians, if we're going to learn to also do it out there in the world, in our workplace, neighborhood, kids' school, all of those things. So I sent you that document. I don't know if you got it, can look at it quick, or maybe you just remember it. There's a circle on that, and I want to describe the circle and then see what you guys think. But seriously, we talked. Mark said this at the beginning of the call. To me, this idea of becoming friends of sinners requires us relating in this way. I think if we don't train our people to relate in this way, they will remain simply acquaintances with lost people. So if you look at the circle, at the center of the circle, it talks about just kind of a normal relational progression. It says contact, acquaintance, friend, disciple. The main thing I want to talk about with that is just, I think as we get to know somebody in the neighborhood or at work or at a party or at the market, you know, at our kids' school, at our kids' sports thing, it's easy to have small talk and to get to know some more general, superficial details about somebody's life. That's normal, right? Where'd you live? Tell me about your family. Where do your kids go to school? So we often will get some of those basic details of somebody's story, but it doesn't progress very far beyond that. It's just kind of the world today. I don't know if it used to be different 50 years ago or not, but that's just kind of the world today. Superficial relationship. So when that happens, I think those relationships fit in that acquaintance category. You know the person's name, you know where they live, where they work, who their favorite Premier League team is, you know, all those important things. Okay. But not anything deeper, not what has shaped them, not some of the broken parts of their story, not who has influenced them. So that's the work we have to do to see those relationships progress, grow, deepen from acquaintance to friend. Because if they don't, we're usually not going to have any spiritual opportunity with them. Most people, when they have questions about life, death, eternity, crisis, sin, you know, big topics, who are they going to go to? Who are they going to go to have those conversations? Usually, they're going to go to family and friends. Family that they trust, friends that they trust. So if we do not become those trusted friends, we will not have opportunity to go to those places in their story. So how do we get there? That's what the outside of the circle is trying to communicate. If you look in the upper left part of the circle, it says their story. That's just as we, again, meet people, neighborhood, work. Again, we talked about this at the beginning of the call. God has placed those people around us, most of them, that he wants us to influence. But it requires an intentionality, a relational commitment to pursue them. And I think that's what it means to be a good missionary, which I would believe grows out of our identity and our calling as a disciple of Jesus. So we don't do it as a method, as a technique. We do it because it's a response to who we are as followers of Jesus. So it's like, why would I do what you're saying with my coworker? A couple of reasons. Because that's who I'm called to be. That's how I'm called to live. But also that person that is in front of me, that coworker or neighbor, they are made in the image of God. They are an image bearer. That person who stands in front of me, that neighbor across the street, is taking their rubbish bins out. Did I say it right? Rubbish bins. Okay, great. They're an image bearer. God created them in their image, in his image, and he desires to be in relationship with them. We're potentially part of that story. So are we going to respond in those moments throughout our normal days? Are we going to respond to be intentional to get deeper into their story? When we do that, if you looked at the document very closely, I talk about asking good questions. Good, intentional questions. Asking them about their family, asking them about where they grew up, how they grew up. Who were the influences? Oh, did you have brothers and sisters? Tell me more about that. Were you the baby in the family, or were you the oldest? Oh, how was that for you growing up? How was your relationship with your dad? My relationship with my dad wasn't very good. I'd love to hear about that. How about your mom? Do you have a close relationship? And as we ask those types of questions, you're going to hear the highlights of somebody's story and some of the sad, probably broken parts of it. You're going to hear that their relationship with their father wasn't good, and their mom had breast cancer when they were a teenager, and they had this crisis in their life, and one of their brothers, one of their sisters, died in a car accident. So as you hear those things, you see the next part of the circle says our story. That's when we begin to connect those details to details in our story. and they will always connect. That's part of the beauty of, again, God's design in all of this. No matter what you say about your story, my story will always be similar or different, right? So if it's similar, we can talk about the similarities and go deeper. If it's different, we can talk about those differences and go deeper. So then I share some parts of my story. Like I said, oh, I was the baby in a family of 7. 3 older brothers, older sister, I was the baby. I can talk all about what it was like to be the baby. And then it connects back to their story. And then I heard them talk about their relationship with their mom, with their dad. I can talk about that in my story. So this back and forth, that's why the circle, you see those arrows around the outside, it circles, goes around and around. So it might be 10 minutes with a coworker this week. You ask them 2-3 questions. You get to know the 10 more minutes of their story. Then next week, coffee break or tea time. Am I right? Okay. Tea time. You're like, man, last week when we were talking, I loved hearing that little part of your story. You growing up in that small town. Can you tell me more about that? How was that like going to school in a small town where everybody knew everybody and all the families knew, other families? Like, what was that like? And then they're going to reveal more of their story, the good and the bad. Good questions always lead to that. Okay? But again, go back to the circle. As we hear different parts of someone's story, we're always going to hear probably ways to serve or bless them. You see that at the top of the circle? So here's where we're saying, man, one of their children is sick right now, and they're really struggling. I bet our community could bless them in some way. Bless them with some meals, bless them with some babysitting, bless them by, who knows, paying a bill. So those are all things that communities I've worked with through the years do on a regular basis. Pay people's bills, provide yummy, healthy, hot meals for them. If they're in the middle of a crisis, somebody died, somebody had a baby, somebody changed jobs, we will say, man, we'd love to bring you a few meals. Or do some babysitting, or help them with a house project, or help them get their car fixed. But how would you know how to do those things for somebody if you didn't hear their story in a deep enough way to really hear what those things are? We wouldn't. And so, but then when we do those practical things, the blessing, always, you're going to have more opportunities to ask them more questions, to hear more of their story as you bless them. You drop off a meal, just takes 5 minutes, knock on the door, say, yeah, they knew you were bringing the meal by because you had already talked about it. So you drop off the meal, say, how's that situation going? We're praying for you. Anything else we can help with? Sounds like good family, doesn't it?
Todd, the one thing I would say before you carry on is what we've noticed in church is sometimes people will have a pet project. I want this person to come to faith, and they'll pour everything into them for years, and sometimes there's zero fruit. I think the thing that we're finding different with MC is that we're casting our net wide rather than chasing after specific people, and people are self-selecting so that we know when we're blessing people, when we're investing people, that they're already showing up, they're already asking questions, that we've not chosen them, they've chosen us.
Good.
I think that's an interesting thing that we've been observing.
Good. That connects back again to our previous call. A couple things. One, yeah, I think it's both of what you're saying, Mark. It's like who are the pool, who is the pool of fish, you know, where we're fishing, but saying from that group of people, where is the good soil? And you described the good soil as the people that are wanting some relationship, wanting some help, they're not constantly, I believe, you know, as we look at the biblical story, those are the people God has prepared, is preparing to hear and respond to him. So we've got to be prayerful and discerning with our communities. Say, okay, we've got 40 people around us, work relationships, neighborhood relationships. We can't love 40 people well. Where is the good soil? Who are those that we're going to be more consistent with, more intentional with? And so we come back to the circle. And again, I love that you highlighted the point too. We do this in community. So getting to know people's stories, that's often how we will actually spend some of our community nights together, or what we call family meal nights, where we will say, you know what, tonight we're just gonna ask 2 or 3 people some questions about their stories, and the whole community is gonna get to hear it. It's gonna help everybody love each other better. It's gonna build trust amongst the community. And usually, okay, if we move on in the circle, it says their story, our story, God's story. If we're genuine in our questions, if we're genuine and vulnerable with our stories, almost always it's going to lead into spiritual places. Because how can we talk about our life for very long without it leading to spiritual places? You know what I mean? And how we had crises and God helped, God intervened, or other Christians who were really supportive and helpful at different moments in our story. So as we talk about our story, it's going to lead into spiritual places. And then finally to Jesus as the hero of that story. So somebody's talking about, we had a mom in our community who tragically lost a child. And we were at a park not too long ago, and we were just sitting there playing some volleyball, throwing some frisbee, but she was sitting with 2 other moms. One of them was one of the Christian moms from our community. Another one was a non-Christian mom. And I don't know what they were talking about at the beginning. So they were just sitting there eating some food. We were over here playing these sports. And it somehow came up that she had lost this child. And so for the next 30 minutes, she had the opportunity to tell her story about losing the child and saying she couldn't have survived the pain of it without God's care and the care of many Christians around her. So it was a really powerful moment for this non-Christian to hear that part of her story. But how did it happen? It was just at the park. There was no program, there was no event, there was no planned, but it's because our people understand the power of story and understand when you go to the park or a party or a meal or your kid's school, We can do that all the time. We can ask good questions. We can be good listeners. We can be open and vulnerable with our stories. And it can lead to Jesus, even at the park. So imagine how many more conversations you're going to have, significant spiritual conversations. Imagine how much more spiritual influence you're going to have in the lives of non-Christians if you can train your communities to live like this. If you can train your communities to relate like this, speak like this. Again, good questions, good listeners, looking for ways to serve and bless as we hear people's stories. Okay? What do you think? Tell me what are the barriers to this in your context? We've got a few different contexts here, okay? We've got England, we've got Wales, we've got France.
I think for us, it's just sharing it, even for those within the church, let alone the people outside the church, that we don't really know each other. And I think, like you were saying, really, if you're not comfortable with each other, it's then very hard to think you're on mission together. And there's a fear factor that somebody's going to let you down or say the wrong thing because you've just not built up that mutual trust. So I think we do need to get a lot better, or we certainly do in our context, of actually just being natural and opening up and being vulnerable and having those good questions that we just explore and talk about, because otherwise it's just, like you say, it's just very superficial. So, I mean, one of the projects I'm involved with, the family mentoring with Rock, and we have to do an interview for the mentors. And I recognize through that people have to talk through their life and experiences. And I just felt so privileged when you go through that with people, but they're really opening up and having to share things that I'm thinking, I bet they haven't shared this with their friends, you know, and hurts and things. And you just think, one, it's a privilege, but two, it's just like incredibly, it draws you closer to the other person, gives you great understanding and a care for them as well. So, you know, I think there's a lot of potential in what you're saying.
Great. Thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, I said this earlier. Because a lot of churches will say, okay, how do we train our people to relate like this, ask good questions with non-Christians? I said, guess what? The best training is to do it with each other inside the church in normal life. So you guys, that's why we're on these calls. We're talking about missional communities or smaller communities that live life like family on mission. That's how they need to be relating. And then I think on our first call, we talked about this sub-structure, these smaller relationships called a DNA group. Three or four women together, 3 or 4 men together. That's what it means to DNA. It's really, it has the Bible at the center, but again, for us to be good Bible people, to become doers of the word, not just studiers of the word or hearers of the word, we've got to push into people's stories so that then we can push the Bible into each other's lives. But it's amazing how easy it is to like study the Bible formally, technically, and never get to some deeper places, never get to a heart level. Without that, we don't get transformation.
So often, Todd, we start on life application. We study the Bible, and then we think, how could this apply to our lives? Can we imagine a context where this could be applied to our lives? When actually, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also need to do Bible application, don't we? Where we start with our lives and say, how does the Bible apply to this? And we're not so good at that. We like to start with a you know, if we could all turn to page 13. You know, that's safe, that's good, but to share about what's really happening in my heart tonight, you know, that's vulnerable, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, we said this at the beginning of the call. I think the gospel, these smaller groups exist to massage the gospel into each other's hearts. Because the more we do that, the more heart change we get, the more heart change we get, the more relationships change, priorities change, schedules change, choices change, because they're growing out of a healthier heart. So I believe this DNA type commitment, relational commitment, is some of the best training ground. It's part of the beauty of it. You get the benefit of it in terms of transformation with each other as Christians, but then it's also helping everybody become better missionaries. Because now they can go to work, now they can go to school, now they can live in their neighborhood with much better relational intentionality. Other thoughts, questions about that? What are the barriers? So Andy said, yeah, we gotta do better, even internally in our churches, in our groups.
We just asked, we had a really good, oh, sorry. I'm not.
No, you're good.
What the highs been this week and what have the lows been? It's a really simple question, but it's really good. And you start with yourself. So you're going to be honest as a leader, which gives permission then for other people to be honest and vulnerable.
Good.
And last week we had it was great. It was really just around the table. We were eating dinner and we just got around, we're just sharing how we're doing. And then I think from the back of that, then I suppose the Bible passage we looked at was actually in relation to what somebody shared. So, sometimes you can be really so scripted, but actually it's not really touching where people are. So you've got to be prepared to move in the moment of like, okay, this person's struggling in this area. They've just shared this. Let's see what the Bible, we were just saying what the Bible has to say into that. So yeah, it's just it's like this natural sort of organic thing that, yeah, it was a really special evening. It was last week. Yeah. So I just think that those questions we ask it. We have it in our family. We've always had a tradition of Sunday family tea around the table. We always ask what's the high of the week, what's the low of the week, and we pray for each other like that. So it's come out of that. But I think actually they're just really simple, great questions because it's just really taken down the barriers for us of building this family. And one of the guys, he's not born again, but he said to me, he said to me a couple of times, like, Jude, I feel like you're my sister. And I'm like, well, I am, I am actually. It's okay. That's how I see it, family. And that's for me, it was like, yeah, that's amazing.
Very cool. Thinking
of that, he's thinking that actually I'm really valuing you, and he's valuing us as a family. He's got to go, but he feels comfy, doesn't he? He feels safe.
Yep.
He feels known. He feels that he wants to be there. That's a win-win.
Yep. Great comments. Great comments. The other thing that's going on when you're also in these smaller groupings, these relationships with 3 or 4, in addition to your larger community, is that it forces everybody to talk. That might sound like not a big deal. It's a very big deal, especially for the introverts. If everybody does not learn to tell their story, articulate good questions, learn to talk about life, learn to talk about the practicalities of Jesus in everyday life, how will they ever do it out there in the world, right? But so many times our groups are too big, or they're too formal. So only a few people talk and everybody else listens. You got to get away from that. You can't have a bunch of listeners. If you have only listeners, you don't learn to talk. You don't learn to articulate truths about life and Jesus and the heart and all of that.
You don't belong either. As an example, we have there's a group I know that we've got. They're great young leaders. We love them dearly, but there's quite a dominant in that group. There's two very dominant male and female. They're not married, but they're two very dominant. And so some other members of the group, one of them who's living with us, says, I'm really struggling with it because I just feel there's such a dominance, and that the leaders of the group are quite gentle. So
Yeah.
the other two seem to be dominating the whole time. So subsequently, I mean, this is not an example of a good group. So I'm not proud of this. That's challenging in terms of how we manage that. But anyway, but you know, it's a concern because I know some people have come up, they've gone to the group and actually because of what's going on, they don't feel they belong. They don't really feel they've got anything to say. And so actually their emotional commitment to the group, they don't really feel it's home.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to, you know, they're not going to stick in. They're not going to, because so, you know, I mean, we can talk about this. It's just difficult. Sorry, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. You know, you might be as leaders doing stuff, but other people in your other leadership aren't. It's blinking difficult. It's hard.
Well, I love how you describe that, and it's so important to be paying attention to when your community meets for anything, for a meal, a party, something more formal. You've got to try to parent. It's like being a parent, okay, with the kids, and not letting one of your kids dominate. Not letting one of your kids control the situation. It's like, no, everybody's going to talk tonight. We want to hear from everybody. Everybody's got an equal voice. We want to hear what everybody thinks. We want to hear how everybody's feeling at a heart level. We want to hear how everybody thinks this idea should affect our everyday lives. So some of that is the ongoing leadership we need to provide to the community, like a family, like parents, so that everybody has a voice, is being asked. And so there's been many times where I've had louder people in my communities that like to talk, that like to dominate, and I'll put some boundaries on them. And I will say, love to hear your thoughts later, but right now I want to hear from these two. And I will specifically ask these two how they're feeling, what's going on. And so, yeah.
The other thing we found has helped is seating. We don't all, like a family, we don't all have to be in the same room all the time. And actually people can then self-select. So we got a little veranda out the back with just a seat that seats two, and you'll find that always filled with introverts. They self-select for the veranda because they can just speak to one person, and you can almost see them going out there. They know where it is, and they don't want to be in the big group. They want to have a one-to-one. Okay. So there's some great conversations happen there.
Yeah, good. I love that awareness. Love that awareness. We've got to create a culture in our groups where everybody appreciates the different personalities, and where everybody sees the complementary nature of introverts, extroverts, older, younger, experienced, less experienced. So, but hey, great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a cultural thing, as we are French, as you know. But we were just wondering if we keep on inviting people that we know, that even if they are friends, but some will find it maybe weird that we keep on inviting them so often. So I was just wondering, how do you manage with that? And do the people are a bit afraid if you keep on inviting them? And do you have some reaction? Well, we just want to know how do you feel about it?
Good question. One comment, and others comment as well. But I think, again, if the relationship is new and is that acquaintance type of relationship, it can feel a little strange to them if you keep inviting them to a meal, a party, your house, because they don't know you very well. It's like, why? Like, they're trying to manipulate me somehow. There's something weird going on here because they don't know me very well. Why are they? So yeah, I think that's a bit of a challenge when relationships are new. But again, even more motivation to build that trust, to get to know their story. Because then if an invitation is coming from somebody they know and trust, then it's not strange. Then it's like, oh, we like them, they like us. They just want to be together, want to eat together, want to play together, want to go to the park together, want to go for a bike ride together, because we like each other. That's why they keep inviting us. Our kids like each other. Our kids like playing together. See, the last time we were with them at the park, kids were playing, laughing for 90 minutes.
Yeah. One thing that we've found helpful in that respect is just telling them what we're doing. And that might seem really obvious, but we just kind of tell them that, oh, we're doing this thing called missional community. We're going to be meeting together a lot. We're going to be eating together a lot, and we're going to be doing this like way into the future. So we'd love you to be part of that. If you're okay with that, we're okay with that. Don't feel that you've got to bring something every time. Don't feel you have to come every time. So we just handle it on WhatsApp, and everybody gets to see it simultaneously, and they can reply whether they're coming or not. So it's kind of an opt-in, opt-out thing. But they're part of the WhatsApp group, and some come more often than others. So, we still got other people who are not on the WhatsApp group who we'd love to invite in, but that's just tell them what you're doing.
I like that. Wait, Margaret, you got to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I was just going to say that what you were saying, Todd, I think is very important, because it's just really being sensitive and walking at the other person's pace into their life, and as you say, sort of gaining their trust and everything. But as well, though, I do agree with Mark that it is actually not to say that what you were saying isn't being honest, Todd, but it is being very upfront and open, just saying to people, look, this is what we're doing, so that they can't actually have any sort of suspicions, as it were, bad suspicions. They know straight away that that's what it's kind of all about.
Yep.
So yeah, I think both are good, really.
Yep.
Just have to be very sensitive.
And that's actually a fun or positive talking point with these people, is say, we got this community of people here. We live a lot of life together. Try to be good family together. Try to support each other. We do a lot of meals, a lot of parties. We do all these things regularly. Like, what a very positive, what a very positive thing to be able to say, because it's not, it's obviously not common in our modern world, right?
I'm just intrigued when you say you do a lot of life together. I feel kind of convicted by that. I mean, what are you doing, Mark? Are you doing a lot of life together?
Yeah, not as much as we'd like to, Jude. So there's a pull to it being Sunday centric. That's deeply ingrained in our culture, and we're trying our best to debunk that by doing stuff on Saturdays, Friday nights. So we just mapped out how many points of contact there are during the week. Of course, not everybody's at everything, but there's probably 4 or 5 points of contact a week, which, you know, depending on if you're, you know, in a DNA group or not, there'd obviously be more points of contact. If you're a leader, there's even more. Some people, we just see them once a week for the meal, the big meal. Sometimes we might also go out to the movies, you know, occasionally, or we might go for a walk, or we might bump into them for coffee for a one-to-one. So it's like lots of different layers to it. But we would love to, I think the next thing for us is to get in a regular pattern once a month of, which has been really hard, of getting people to just social. I mean, we've got the churchy bit sorted, you know, the Christian content bit sorted, that's working. The big meal is working. Trying to get people to actually socialize together, which we thought would be the easiest thing, you know, to get them to go to the cinema together, to get them to go and do stuff together, is proved to be really hard. People like to do that stuff on their own, it would seem, in our town. So that's the next challenge for us, is getting them to hang out together more. We thought that'd be the easy bit.
Yep, very good.
I mean, I feel quite convicted by that. So, don't you? I mean, we're all, you know, in some ways we're doing well, in other ways I'm like, oh gosh.
Well, Jude,
Don't you think that that in itself is natural and normal? I mean, that's the whole of life is like that. You're successful in one area and you're not successful in another. And I think we also need to remember too that we are fighting our enemy, who absolutely hates what we're doing, and he is going to make it really as difficult as he can. And I think at the beginning, when we were saying, you know, with whatever we're doing, I mean, I'm single on my own, and you know, I can very easily come into sort of condemnation. Oh my goodness, you know, I haven't got this big community thing going on, you know, and I've got a small flat and I can't do this and I can't do that and the next thing. And the Lord said to me just recently, well, you know, I've got my neighbors, so, and you know, I mean, I very, you know, do have them in for tea and chats and this and that, and we chat outside a lot, and you know, we're a very close community here, really. And so the Lord just said to me, well, that is what I've called you to do. So I think, you know, we do need to relax and know that, you know, the Lord sees every effort that we're doing, and I believe he will give us the victory, but we are fighting an enemy who doesn't like it.
Fighting an enemy and fighting against, like we said earlier in the call, a lot of cultural, church culture, church history.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
As well as cultural history working against this, because of the rampant individualism and like self-centeredness. Like, so I often tell churches, it's like part of the work we're doing is re-churching because of the traditional, formal, program-driven way of being the church. So there's a whole lot of re-churching work, but then combined with that, honestly, there's a whole lot of reparenting work. Yeah. Unfortunately, most people around us did not grow up in very healthy families. They didn't sit at the dinner table and have their parents ask them thoughtful questions. They didn't grow up at meals thinking or knowing how to respond to questions. Sounds crazy, but very true. Talked with a group of leaders over the weekend, totally affirmed that. They actually asked a whole bunch, I can't remember who they were with, they asked a whole bunch of like adults, and it was shocking how few meals families spend together, sitting at a table,
Yeah.
not in front of a device, not in front of a screen, sitting at a table, undistracted, just food and conversation. Was almost never. And these are like normal people.
Yeah.
These aren't like broken families. This is just, unfortunately, unhealthy modern
Yeah.
family dynamics. So there's a whole bunch of reparenting in all of this, where people don't know how to be around the table together. They don't know how to ask good questions, be good listeners. They don't know what good hospitality looks like. Like, how do you invite people into your home, your yard, and care for them? Like, meet them at the door and say hello. Sounds crazy, right? They don't know how to do it. Like, oh, we've got guests here. We're supposed to meet them at the door and greet them and like say hello and like basic hospitality. Most people don't. Again, it wasn't modeled for them growing up, and they didn't experience it growing up. So that's part of the work we've got to do, is the rechurching and the reparenting. It affects all of these things. So one of the last things, I sent you that second document. It's really just a summary of things we've been talking about on these last 3 calls. Called Missional Community Specifics. Very, very specific, very practical, I hope. That's come from hundreds and hundreds of conversations with churches around the world. So that's where those ideas and that focus came from. So it's that, but the one detail I wanted to pull from that and connect to all of this is that we must organize our groups and our churches in such a way with shared leadership, so this does not fall on you alone. It does not fall on you as a couple. That's exhausting. Not only is it exhausting, it is not going to be as effective or as fruitful, because the only influence then is coming from you or me. And that's not enough. People need multiple influences from different giftings, different personalities, different experiences, different stories. And so there has to be a shared leadership at the center of each of your communities. And that doesn't mean, shared leadership doesn't mean they all have to be like super Christians. Shared leadership just means they have to be faithful Christians. So Will and Jude, you could have 3 others join you at the center of one of your communities. You could have 3 others, and 2 of those 3 could be younger believers, but faithful and committed to living life like this. Because again, then you get the different gifting, different perspective, different personality, different stories, and that diversity is what's so powerful in the shaping, in the formation of making disciples. It's not just 1 or 2 people. I think that's been one of the big fails, personally, one of the big fails of traditional small group functioning. They have 1 leader or 2 leaders. Yeah, it's not as good. It's not as good as a diversity. So take that back and say, okay, how do we strengthen the shared leadership, the core leadership at the center of each of our groups, so that we're really functioning together, with multiple multiple parents. Any final thoughts about that? We'll sign off. What were you saying there, Mark? I didn't see your chat comments.
We've just been having a chat about what a relief it is to be not the solo person. You know, we have a question here. How do you manage to balance communities, relationships, and personal relationships with your contacts? It takes time in a week to organize community events and personal invitations. You know, obviously you can answer on that. Andrew's then added, it would seem quite a challenge to find others who are willing to share leading an MC. Absolutely. Someone said to me once, all the easy stuff has been done. There's only hard stuff left. That's why this is worth doing. So yeah, I think it's
awesome.
Again, do it together. This forces you to make disciples because there's no other possibility. And actually we need that. It's good for us. So I don't know what you'd add to that, Todd.
Great. I like it. I like it. The easy stuff's been done. Now we're called to the harder work. And it is, Jude, you've been honest about this on the call. I appreciate that. It's why a lot of churches don't go this direction. It's easier to pull off a Sunday. It's easier to do Sunday. It's nice and clean. Everybody comes, you do your 2-hour thing, you go home, live life for the next 6 days, come back, do it again. Might have sprinkle in a few other little things, but that's much easier, safer, cleaner than getting into this deeper relational work. But I think it's what we're called to. I think true discipleship is messy. Messy, requires intentionality, requires sacrifice, requires planning your schedule in a thoughtful way. A lot of people don't do that. Talk with leaders, Christians all the time. Not very good at planning their weekly, monthly schedule with a relational priority, especially with an other-centered priority. So guess what? That's part of the reparenting, is even in helping people think about their time differently, think about their schedule differently. How are they stewarding their weekends? I just had that conversation. All these busy people that say they don't have time, and like, okay, I understand everybody's busy. Okay. But what about your weekends? How are you stewarding those? Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, non-work days. How are you stewarding those? You stewarding those with a relational priority, with another centered priority? Most people they're not even asking that question. They're basically saying, how can we fill our weekends with fun? How can we fill our weekends with food and fun? That's what the average person is trying to do. But Mark, you already alluded to this. Part of living life this way as the church is that we can actually do both. Food and fun and relationship and goodness. Like, how about if we do that? Because we all want that. We want to fill our weekends with that. How about if we do that, but just with more relational intentionality? We're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it with a community. And we're also going to invite some outsiders into that. But it's still food and fun and the park and sports and parties and like good, fun, relational, life-giving stuff. So, okay, hey, we got to go.
Yeah.
Let me
Todd,
pray.
yeah, can I just say one thing just about follow-up? What we've heard tonight is not neat or tidy. It's incredibly messy. But I think I didn't see Jesus living a nice, neat, tidy life. And I think the other thing I was just going to say briefly before you prayed, Todd, is that you know, a lot of Christians ask me, how do I turn the conversation around about Jesus? How, you know, they're really asking, how do I shoehorn Jesus into an otherwise unrelated conversation? And it's like, if you do this, if you pursue people's stories and peel back the onion layers, you won't have to. They will turn the conversation around about Jesus. And you just need to be patient and ask good questions, and you'll unearth that God-shaped hole that's there, you know, if you find it. If you want to find out more about what this looks like in your context, if you'd like a one-to-one with Todd, or if you'd like to talk with people in your geographical area or in your organization or denominational network, or you just want to, you know, see what's next, we'd love to set that up for you. So please do get in touch with me, and we'll see what we can do to set something up that's handcrafted for you where you are. So please, or even if you're watching this, I know we've got quite a lot of people who can't be here tonight who want to watch this. If that applies to you, please do get in touch, and we'll do all we can to fit this to your context. Is that fair enough, Todd?
Yep. Absolutely. So I'm encouraged that all of you are taking this very seriously. So that's a big deal. So
Well, thank you very much, Todd, for everything. It's been really, really good.
be encouraged. Be encouraged. God is pleased with your desire to love people well, your desire to make disciples, your desire to grow, learn. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And what I'm going to pray is we cannot, like, this is a supernatural thing we're called to. Part of the tiredness, discouragement that we often feel is that I think we try to do too much on our own without supernatural resources, without God providing that. So I think we need this constant humble posture of asking for the spiritual resources to love well, even to be motivated to go next door and invite somebody, or even to organize another party on another Friday night. Like that motivation. Jude, many times my wife and I don't feel like it.
I think about it.
Not another meal. We can't do it this. We can't do it this week. Not enough. We can't have people in our home again. We can't have 15 kids around. Like, and then we'll step back and cry out.
Yeah.
Cry out to God and say, man, we need some motivation.
Yeah.
Right now, because we don't have it. So give us the motivation, ability to love, ability to serve. Help us. So let me pray that for us. Father, thanks for my brothers and sisters there, and for their desire to love people inside the church and outside the church where you have placed them in their different towns and cities. And I pray that you would encourage them tonight, even as they go to bed, that they are your sons and daughters. They are well loved by you. So help them to feel that in a very personal way tonight. And I pray that you would lead all of us forward, lead us to see what's next and who's next, and just how to live life faithfully and obediently to the things you've called us to. And I pray for more help for each of them in their churches. You said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray for more workers. don't know where they need to come from, but we pray and hope and believe that that you will do that. So pray for more help, and pray that as they love people in the ways we talked about on this call, that you would change lives. You would change hearts, that people would be drawn to you through our communities, through how we live. And so we pray the lives would be changed. We pray for fruit in the lives of the people you've called us to care for. So, Father, thanks for loving us so well. Thanks for this great conversation. So many good things talked about. So we love you and pray these things in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.